Okay, hi, my name's Mark Fuller. My day job is teaching at UW-Rock County, and then I'm channeling for Sue Nelson today. Just a reminder, she wanted me to remind you that there are vigils every Tuesday at 4 o'clock at 20 South Main Street, and every third Friday at the corner of Milton Avenue and Blackbridge Road at 4 p.m. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce these three people who are either have been cited or will be cited. We have somebody in limbo. I'll introduce everybody and then I'll let them each speak in the order that I introduced them afterwards. First over here on my right is Bart Munger. He lives in Milton and he works for the University of Wisconsin. He was part of the weekly vigil before he worked in Madison, and he was cited for wearing "I love you Wisconsin" a sign such as that, and I'm sure he'll explain in better detail. Next in the middle is Chris Reeder. He's in limbo as to being cited. He spent most of his life working in professional theater. He ran a professional theater in northern Wisconsin before moving to Madison, where he works as an international courier. He's been leading the daily Solidarity Sing-Along since March, and that's where I first met him. We talked about where the signs got stored, and he tells me that it's I think 255 days since he's been doing this. Amazing. And then finally, on my left, Matt Rothschild, the editor of the Progressive magazine since 1994. He's also the co-founder and director of the Progressive Media Project, which since 1993 has been distributing opinion pieces to newspapers around the country in an effort to diversify and democratize the national debate. He was cited for wearing a sign that states the First Amendment to the Constitution. So without further ado.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming. It's great to see everyone. It's always nice to come down to Janesville again. I used to come down at least once a month because my father-in-law and mother-in-law lived here, Judge Ernie Agnew and Corrine Cunningham Agnew. I just passed their home on Sherman Avenue when I got lost coming here. I went to Lodge Street, not Lodge Drive, so that was the issue. You know, I used to also love going to the Alpine restaurant with them and having the real turkey. It's hard to get real turkey in restaurants anymore, and the homemade soup and homemade pies. So, you know, I miss the old diners. I miss the old timers. And speaking of old timers, I just wanted to salute a great progressive in Wisconsin who died this week, Professor Jim Crow at the University of Wisconsin, scientist, great progressive. He was 95. I was supposed to have dinner with him or lunch with him in December, and we had a date all set up, and he called to cancel because he'd gotten sick. But he was a terrific progressive, and anyone who knew him, either through his great academic work or through his terrific peace work, it's a great loss for all of us. Beautiful day today. It was a beautiful day to drive down. It's a little eerie, though, this crazy winter we're having, and it's a little hard to enjoy just because it's a signal of how crazy the climate's become, and that's a subject for another day, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be invited by Sue Nelson to speak. Sue, who's been such a great activist and nonviolent disobedient practitioner for the last 25 years anyway, and also to be on this panel with Bart Munger, who I met that fateful day on November 1st when he was holding that sign, "I love Wisconsin," and I saw him get hauled off for that. And I myself got hauled off shortly thereafter. And Chris, I got to tell you about Chris, has just done this incredible job with these sing-alongs. I don't know, how many of you have been to one of those sing-alongs? I mean, so, okay, you know the great spirit and the great energy and the great enthusiasm he brings to these sing-alongs, which represent one of the great exhibitions of nonviolent protest that I think our state has ever seen, because it's such an invigorating, inspiring protest to attend, and you leave that protest, you leave that sing-along totally re-energized, and obviously Scott Walker can't stand the heat. That's why he's tried to ban these and tried to proscribe any protest that consists of 4 people or more in the state capitol unless you get a permit 72 hours ahead of time. unless you agree to pay for the extra police work too. I mean, that's how crazy this assault on our free speech has become in this state, and that was one of the reasons why I myself decided to take a part in that action on November 1st. My story is a real simple one, really. I had been reading about, not so much in the mainstream papers, but on the web, and seeing videos on the web, and seeing reports from our great freelance reporter at the Progressive, Rebecca Kemble, who's been covering these crazy things going on in the Capitol for the last 9, 10, 11 months on our webpage. One of my colleagues, Ruth Conniff, who's the political editor at the Progressive, came up to me at one of our editorial meetings and said, you know, I'm learning more from Rebecca Kemble than I am from, on her Facebook page, than I am from reading the Wisconsin State Journal or listening to radio stations or anything. So she said, why don't we ask her to write for us? So she started to write for us, and it's been a tremendous asset that she's brought to the Progressive's website at progressive.org, but also just to my understanding about what's going on in Wisconsin. And when she posted on our website this story about people getting hauled off, and had a link to the video of people getting hauled off simply for holding up a sign or taking a picture, God, I was shocked first, and then I was disgusted. And I also was upset that the people who were doing it were almost all young people who were getting savaged in the Wisconsin State Journal as being crazy, or just being hurting the cause, and all these things that I didn't think were true. And so I thought it was important for you know, some of the elders in the protest community to join some of these young people in an act of solidarity, to support them in what they were doing, and more importantly, to stand up for the principle of free speech right here in Wisconsin. And so at my every other Wednesday night poker game that Irwin Knoll used to be in, and Sam Day used to be in, the great Madison political activist, left-wing activist Alan Ruff is in the game. And Alan, I said to Alan, you know, when I folded once, and which I should do more of, and and he was out of the game too. I said, Alan, you know, this is crazy what's going on in the Capitol, and we can't just sit back and let these kids take all the heat for it. Why don't we get some of our friends together and take a stand on this? And as we were calling up some friends, we found out that on the web there was this Facebook day called for November 1st with the creative title of Concealed Camera Day. And so we decided to join that. Now, concealed camera, the great beauty of that slogan was it points out just how insane the Republicans in the state assembly are, because, of course, they say it's okay for people to bring in a concealed weapon into the state assembly gallery, but we can't bring in an unconcealed cell phone. That was cell phone. We can't bring in an unconcealed cell phone into the state assembly gallery, otherwise we'll get kicked out. So what that tells me is that the Republicans who run the state assembly are more afraid of accountability and more afraid of free speech than they're afraid of getting a bullet to the head. And that is just so bizarre. And it tells you that they have no respect for democracy, that they consider the people of the state, their constituents, their actual constituents, to be a nuisance, just mere mosquitoes, you know, that they can flick away. And so we decided we had to, you know, do something about that. And so on Concealed Camera Day on November 1st, how many of us were there? About 55 or 60? Something like that, maybe.
They were probably close. Well,
up in the gallery?
Got arrested.
No, up in the gallery.
But up in the gallery was probably 50.
Yeah, so there was a bunch of us who went into the gallery, and a very officious-looking, not a clerk, you know, who's not the sergeant at arms, the young woman who was there who was giving us instructions, a page. I think she was a page. Maybe she was the sergeant at arms. Anyway, very well dressed, preppy looking young woman telling us no, you know, if we had our cameras out and we were taking pictures, whoops, no, we got to put that away. So, you know, I put it away a couple times, and then people started to get arrested for taking pictures or for holding signs, and I would take pictures of them, and then I took a picture of someone getting arrested for taking a picture, and I got arrested for taking that picture. And the person who, and it was weird because it wasn't a Capitol police officer or a state police, state trooper who arrested me. It was a DNR, you know, a warden, a DNR warden who, and I had no idea that DNR wardens were doing it. And this guy was a really nice guy. I don't think he'd ever shaved before. I mean, he was really young, and.
You're an endangered species.
I asked him whether he wouldn't rather be up at Devil's Lake than in here, and he just kind of shrugged. It was a job for him, but he was nice. He didn't handcuff me. A lot of people got handcuffed actually, and some of the activists or the supporters of some of the activists were wondering why grayhead like me didn't get handcuffed and should have been handcuffed, and it was not fair, and maybe they were right about that. Anyway, I wasn't complaining. And so they processed us in the basement of the Capitol, and they gave us a ticket for other conduct. What the hell did it say? Other conduct prohibited, obstructing. That was what the ticket. That's pretty vague, isn't it? Other conduct prohibited, obstructing. And eventually, anyway, they ultimately, the DA in Dane County ultimately dropped the charge. So that that's my story. I mean, the reason I did it was, one, to show solidarity with the other people who'd been doing it, to stand up for the principle of free speech. This was, as I said, the sign that I was holding. I believe in the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. I believe in Article 1, Section 3 of the Wisconsin Constitution that says no law shall be passed to restrain or abridge the liberty of speech or the press, or Article 1, Section 4 that says the right of the people peaceably to assemble, to consult for the common good, and to petition the government or any department thereof shall never be abridged. So I had this just crudely taped with see-through duct tape on my shirt, this shirt, and it's just, it's part of what's going on in Wisconsin, what's going on in the country, actually what's going on in the world. I just want to put this in some context, because what we're seeing right now is very exciting. And first of all, we should recognize the historic nature of the protests that happened here in Wisconsin in February and March, and I assume many of you were there or participated down here. And that is that in February and March, these mass protests that we saw here were the single largest mass sustained protests ever in the history of the United States for public sector workers. It was that historic, and it was the single largest, most sustained mass rally for workers' rights in the United States since the 1930s. You didn't get that context, watching the nightly news or reading about it in the Wisconsin State Journal or the Gazette, I trust. But, but actually, it was that historic, and it will go down in history as being that historic. And it's not just about getting rid of this one puny man who's the governor of the state right now. This is a campaign that, at its essence, at its core, is about something much, much more. It's about, one, asserting that labor rights are human rights, and labor rights are actually, and union rights are enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which the United States signed in 1948. And it's also about democracy. It's about political democracy, what we were doing, trying to stand up for basic political democracy, free speech. There's a battle on in this country for real political democracy, for one person, one vote, and to accomplish that battle, we need to pass a constitutional amendment to overturn the Citizens United Supreme Court case of 2 years ago that said corporations can spend as much money as they want to buy this candidate and not elect the other candidate. We're not going to have a chance at democracy until we get rid of that, and so there's a good move on to amend the Constitution, and one website to go to is movetoamend.org. Actually, just this week, the New York City City Council passed a resolution to amend the Constitution, and in December, Los Angeles passed a resolution to amend the Constitution. Madison has done so, and a lot of other places are working at it. That's how this movement is going to build to amend the Constitution, and that's crucial. So it's political democracy, but it's also economic democracy. That's what this battle's about. That's what the Occupy Wall Street movement is about. And I see all these things kind of merging together and coming out of the same roots of disempowerment and of economic betrayal that's happened across this country over the last 30 years, with the top 1% grabbing so much of the nation's wealth and so much of the nation's income, and the rest of this country suffering. And one of the reasons people are suffering is because labor has been so under assault. It used to be in the 1950s that 35 to 38% of the workforce was unionized, and now it's down in single digits. And the reason they're going after public employees is because public employees have been organized at about 35%. And if they can get at public employees, then the 7% or so that are unionized in the private sector will even, have less support if they try to get into the public sector. And by going after unions, I don't need to tell people in Janesville. Going after unions can really just go after everybody's standard of living. That's what's going on. This is economic warfare from the top down. It's a joke when people say that those of us who are in the Occupy Wall Street movement or are wanting to establish some kind of economic justice are conducting class warfare. Class warfare has been going on every single day. And people in the upper class have been winning every single battle for about the last 30 years. So that is the context for what we've been seeing here in Wisconsin with the uprising in February and March, with the ongoing tremendous work at these sing-alongs, with this Recall Walker movement, and with the little action that I was involved in. So I just want to encourage everyone to participate in whatever way you can in this very exciting movement, which is actually a worldwide movement for democracy right now. And, you know, to do the activism, you know, whether it's going to the sing-alongs or whether it's collecting petitions or whether it's going to protests in Madison, whatever it is that you can do and that you can do together, I encourage you to do so, and I encourage you to have fun doing it. That's what's great about the sing-alongs, and what was great about those protests in February and March. It was exhilarating to be there. It was fun, it was exciting, it was creative. I mean, everyone's costumes, the signs, the slogans, everything homemade. It was just a tremendous upsurge of human creativity and spontaneous inspirational action, and that's what political action should be. It shouldn't be drudgery. If it's drudgery, we're not going to win, because who wants to do drudgery?